part of that effort. So we added in the issue of freight into it. We added in the roadway network, which is the major mode of transportation in the region that was not part of the plan. And then we also had the issue of, at the time, there is some significant issues coming down the line related to air quality, and we added in the land use piece. Remember all the work that we did several years back on the whole issue of land use and transportation tying together, transit-oriented guidelines, if it was a transit-type project. Those types of efforts we included within the plan and the update back in 2011. This go around, what we really see it as, it's really more of a minor revision, but that doesn't mean there's not still a lot that has happened or changed. We wanted to make sure that we were including it within this update. We wanted to ensure that we're consistent with all the other plans and projects. Things actually over the last several years have changed, and particularly when you go back to 2009, we wanted to make sure we had included those changes within the overall plan. Updated, met with all the partners, continue to meet with all the partners, updating the different networks, updating the different technical information, that several feet high pile of technical data we do in technical memos, we call them. And we also had a new federal transportation bill that we have to ensure that we're consistent with the requirements within that bill that we're doing as part of this effort also. Met with all the various jurisdictions that you all represent, your staffs, met with FDOT, met with the MPOs, the transit agencies, seaports, airports, expressway authorities, regional corridor teams, because there's different activities going on within the region. Met with all those folks, get their input, what they were looking for, what they thought related to the overall discussion. One of the things that came to light as we started looking at this, and I think some of it is sometimes you don't see the forest through the trees, is when you look at the overall plan, it's like, well, how are we really progressing on this? The reality is, you start talking to all the partners, is we are. And it was and I know Mr. Kimbrough and I were at a meeting of the Tampa Bay Partnership there, the Transportation Committee. We had Joe Lopano from Tampa International Airport. They're talking about their activities. And what he was referencing back to was our plan and how the pieces, this was a piece of that plan and how it was all coming together. And we were laughing about, we've heard of that plan before, and how it all came together. And you were really starting to see these things happen, and that we thought was really critically important. The things that are going on, when we talked about managed lanes back in 2009, nobody was really very interested in them. Now, and they're really, FDOT's actually changed the term a little bit to express lanes. We're talking about the same thing. They're full bore moving forward on express lanes within the region, focusing initially on the issue of I-275 and I-4. But that process is moving, and you're going to see projects coming out of that effort in the coming years. That's a perspective of things are really happening. You're seeing the pieces of the plan come together. We heard about the Pinellas AA. We're talking about those things are happening that were originally just a line on a map. Now you're seeing projects develop out of that and move forward. And in addition to the issue of connectivity between the different entities, partnering between the different entities, us and the CCC, the whole regional information resource side of things with the one-call, one-click effort. These elements are really happening, and we want to make sure we include them within the overall update this go-around and recognize them. The issue of priorities, I mentioned those earlier, is our priorities and how those are moving forward. A lot of good activity both and words out of both FDOT and the legislature on these priorities. We're going to see some things happening on these projects that we've been talking about. And then you go to the next step, all right, what are the next set of priorities? How do we keep the, no pun intended, the train moving, and keeping these projects in the pipeline, going from a planning level, line on a map, to actually pavement on the ground. And that's really what we're starting to see the focus. We want to make sure we're recognizing that within the overall master plan update. Talked about the issue of managed lanes and how critically important component they are of the overall plan and how that's coming together. And we'll see projects coming out of that. I just mentioned that. The corridor studies, State Road 54, 56, going to the next level of now looking at that from a toll analysis perspective and maybe a private sector investment in that effort. I mentioned Pinellas, the Smart Connect effort between Sarasota and Bradenton, and looking at that connection and those two entities wanting to proceed further and potentially engaging the private sector in that effort. Just recently, both county commissions voted to take that next step to look at that side of things. The BRT project in Sarasota, reconfiguring that effort, moving that forward. How we've talked previously here before, Howard Franklin Bridge, that connection between Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. And more importantly, I don't think all of you know this, I know that the chair knows it because he told me this bit of information. But if you look at the West Shore Business District and the Gateway Business District that are separated by the Howard Franklin Bridge, but if you put them together and you look at them from employment numbers and square footage, one of the largest in the entire southeastern United States, only behind Atlanta. Do we all even know that? You know, and then the issue of how critically important is transportation, connecting the two together. And part of that's the plan and how it all comes together. The issue of connecting Pasco County and all the activity 54, 56 into this area, the entire USF area down the Bruce B. Downs corridor. I-75 is a key connectivity issue from both the south and the north within the region. And then, as we've talked about earlier, short-term enhancement project. What can you do in the short term to make some significant improvement and provide opportunity for citizens in the region? We started talking with all the various partners. What did we hear? Well, there's the potential of a new port, a new seaport in this region up in Port Citrus along the barge canal. We needed to ensure we were thinking about that. The activities in Hernando County about looking at Brooksville. We heard the vision from the city of Tampa. Brooksville is doing the same thing and want to make sure they're connected with the rest of the region coming up in the future. Pasco County, we've had the discussion here, and their entire change of land use and how they fund transportation, what their focus is on that 54, 56 corridor, the whole mobility fees effort. Talked about Tampa International Airport. What HART is doing here in Hillsborough County, really the region's first sign of express bus service and bus rapid transit with their Metro Rapid service, which actually will begin in the next month or two. You see if you're paying attention, you see the stops out there, branded totally different, an entirely different type of transit service. But it's the first step within this region to have that type of service here. Talked about the Pinellas AA. Bike ped, a significant component. St. Petersburg leading the effort there. Manatee County going through an entire different view of how they move forward and grow in the future. Their how shall they grow effort, and how that's going to affect the issue of land use and transportation and how we connect those areas. What's happening down in Sarasota County and Manatee County along the University Parkway corridor around I-75, major activity center that when we originally were looking back in 2009 wasn't near what it's now looking to become. We need to include that, make sure we've got that connectivity to it all and including that within the plan. Things are happening, and we want to make sure we've got these rectified and shown within the plan and understand how they impact the overall picture. Looking at the overall all transit network, the issue of premium transit. One of the things we previously talked about was modes. We talked about in the plan previously, in 2050, we talked about long distance rail. Is it rail in 2050? It may or may not be. We know it's going to be premium transit. We know we need that connectivity. So we want to make sure we're including that kind of thinking within the overall plan and ensuring that we're putting it all together so that it fits together, working with all of our transit partners. That's what's happening now as part of this plan. When you look at the different types, streamlining those service types, looking at the managed lanes, all of the various corridor studies. We talked about Metro Rapid, but it's also in downtown Tampa. It's the issue of the streetcar loop, actually making an entire loop within downtown Tampa and being able to be used beyond what it really is used for now. The issue of regional intermodal centers throughout the region, connecting people for the various modes. All of those pieces that are now you're seeing elements move forward, we need to ensure that we're updating, including within the plan. And we've done that, and ensuring that we have all of it tied together with not just the regional side of it, but also the local service, which is key in working with all the transit partners to ensure that that's part of the overall picture. The issue of freight, ensuring that we've again got freight, moving that forward, updating all of the information from a freight perspective was important. But what was also important that I wanted to focus here on the freight issue was, previously we were just showing the dots on a map. The reality is freight areas are they're large land areas. And those large land areas have significant impact. We need to show them that way. And because this connectivity isn't just connecting to a point, it's also because they're not just one point. You need to have all of that within the plan. That was something we heard from the Seaport folks that we need to be looking at and thinking about within the plan. So we're doing that and ensuring that's part of the overall picture. The roadway network, obviously the most critical part of the overall picture, is the biggest part of the overall plan, ensuring that everything is aligned. What the plans we have are aligned with what the plans the MPOs have, what the plans FDOT has, ensuring that they're totally together. The strategic intermodal system, the freight network, the transit network are all tied together. That's what we're doing within the update, and we're showing that. The issue, as I mentioned, management, you see that over and over as part of it, but then making sure we've got those other updates tied together to the regional roadway network, which we do as part of this update. Key focus of part of this effort is obviously public engagement. You know, all the different ways that we look at public engagement, launching this TBARTA, which is really a forum for people to engage in questions and conversation really amongst themselves. They do that. We're seeing that. Obviously, Facebook, Twitter, all those things we've talked about in the past, continue to do that. Speakers Bureau that we continue to do as part of that effort. We got a lot coming up. Then I also want to talk about the telephone town hall meetings that we recently held at the beginning of April and what occurred there. Overall, we did it for 5 nights. Nearly 40,000 participants as part of those nights. We answered 118 questions. We've never answered that many questions before in the past. That was pretty amazing. I thank all the participants in that. Starting just one by one, Hillsborough County. See what we did with Hillsborough County and the different questions. But this is how many we had in that 1-hour call. People were engaged and interested. Kind of common themes we heard in Hillsborough County. And we're actually going to have for you all of the questions and all of the information. We're posting all of this to the website too. But I just wanted, this is a summary of things. Transit was a key issue within Hillsborough County. Mobility options for the disabled. We heard that several times. And then the issue of Hillsborough County is it's got the more urban, suburban area, and then it has a more suburban, rural area, and looking for more transportation options and improvements in the eastern part of Hillsborough County from the residents that we were hearing was a concern and issue for them. And I thank Secretary Steinman and Commissioner Duncan, who were the participants that night with me going through that effort, went very well. Next we have Sarasota and Manatee. Again, a lot of questions, a lot of people. You know, heard all the different information. Their issue was connectivity both to the north and to the south. That they were limited from a connectivity perspective and looking for more connectivity, looking for more transit improvements. They themselves, was interesting in the different questions, the debate that people had in the questions of whether with the type of transit and the mode, whether it should be high speed or low speed, or should it be this type of train or this type of transit, different things we heard within Sarasota and Manatee County. And that was Commissioner Benak and Councilman Smith participated with us that night, and I thank them for that. Pasco County, again, a lot of activity in Pasco County, a lot of questions. Transportation is a big issue in that county. They had questions about funding for it. You know, concerns and confusion about local funding versus regional and other funding. You know, how well is our penny for Pasco going to pay for these things? And then there was this debate among some of the questioners about, well, do we want more transit because that's going to bring more crime with it? And other people saying no, it brings more opportunity with it. And you know, that kind of questioning from the folks. Alternative modes, they're very interested in that. Bicycles, I talked about cycling and pedestrians being a big part of it. And their issue of Pasco County has the most movement of people that cross county lines for work and looking for other options, looking for those county-to-county transit options is a big issue within Pasco County. And participated that night was Mr. Manuel and then Mr. Mariano, back issue, he's telling me. So we had Jim Edwards from the MPO, and I really thank Jim for helping us out. He had a lot of good answers for us, so he was very helpful that night with us. Pinellas County. Pinellas County again, saying, you're seeing this common theme, a lot of people interested, a lot of people engaged as part of this effort. A lot of discussion because of all the activity related to transit in Pinellas County, a lot of discussion about that, about transit, the issue of light rail, questions about how would it help business. We heard that there was that tie, the economic tie we were hearing in Pinellas County. Well, how will this help local business? I'm a small business. How will this help me? How does this all fit together? Talked about the issue of private sector being more engaged in that effort. Looking at one of their issues was more transportation on kind of the off hours, on weekends and other times that they were looking at. Talked about the issue of the overall transportation system that you see there, the issue of synchronization of the traffic signal system. We have discussion, well, it is synchronized. But, and explaining how and what that was part of that effort. They also mentioned the issue of ferries, of using water transportation as a way to get around and potentially look at that in the future. Citrus and Hernando, in Pinellas was Councilman Danner and Mr. Duncan, thanked them for that. And then we had in Citrus and Hernando with Mr. Kimbrough and Commissioner Bay participated. Very engaging, very lively discussion. We had lots of questions. It was boom, boom, boom in Citrus County. We were hitting it hard and a lot of activity there. Their questions were somewhat common theme, but somewhat different. There was a huge issue with them related to the issue of transportation and how it affects the issue of jobs and access to jobs, in the economic side of it. And focus, as you expect, a lot on the major corridor plan coming into Citrus County of the Suncoast Parkway. But they had a lot of that discussion. It was that economic discussion. How does it affect us? How will we have that opportunity? How can we grow economically and be vibrant and successful as a community? And then versus the issue of, well, that may change our way of life now, and what would be the impacts to that? So you had that kind of discussion. We heard from them, as we heard from I think we heard every single night, the issue of, can I get to a Rays game and can I get to Tampa International Airport? We've heard that for 5 years now. We hear that over and over again from everybody. Those two, I tell people constantly, we hear that. It's the number one question we hear, those two issues, about that issue of connectivity. The other thing I would tell you, board members, that was most impressive to me, having gone through all of these nights and heard all the calls and done this in the past, was this time around, you heard much more thankfulness from the public of, thank you for doing this. Thank you for engaging me. Thank you for letting me get my question asked and answered. We had several people ask, how can we do more of this? This is a good way to engage, and we want to know more about what's going on and want to have that. We heard that over and over and over again. And I've heard it in the past, but not to the level that we heard it this time. But that was something that was what I thought, that I took away, was people interested and engaged and wanting more engagement in this transportation discussion. They had questions about the issue of how do we fund all this. It's expensive and understood, and that's obviously a common theme, something we're going to hear over and over again, and finding ways to address the issue of funding for transportation improvements. But certainly the interest and engagement, and a little bit of a difference of that my sense, and this is my sense only, that I would say is less of the woe is me, we have no money, we can't do anything kind of malaise that from the economic side that we've all heard and seen over the last few years of, we got to make some changes, we got to do some things differently. We heard that, was my sense of it. So I just wanted to keep up speed on what we're hearing. All of this is part of our input that we're taking, even though it was before we opened the public hearing. It all comes in. It's all, we're going to use it as we told everybody. We didn't get to their question. We're going to answer it and post it online. We actually put people together with some of the transit agencies who had very specific questions about a connection. We had some disability questions about that, so we put them with, I think it was with HART, PSDA, where some of those questions got them to the right people. so that they can address those things. We'll continue to do that as part of our efforts. We continue moving forward. We're opening the hearing today, as you all know. We'll move forward and bring you all the information that we hear from all the partners at the next board meeting on June 14th and go through that. And with that, Mr. Chair, that's what I have to share with you.
Thank you, Bob, for a great discussion, great presentation on where we are with